Standing right under the metal canopy, barely 5 feet away from him, was a man. He was wearing a cheap, dust-covered business suit, holding a torn piece of cardboard. Scribbled on it in thick, messy marker were 2 words: "Look down." Hello, loves. I hope you've got the doors locked, and you're not listening alone. Welcome to Madam Nightmare. There's a specific kind of loneliness that only exists on Interstate 40 after midnight. Tonight, we look at 3 gripping thrillers from the dark side of I-40. And later tonight, we will find out exactly what happened at that isolated highway inspection plaza. Our first stop takes us to Custer County, Oklahoma, where a late-night 911 call became a dispatcher's worst nightmare. Graveyard shift at Custer County Dispatch was usually just an 8-hour war against falling asleep at the desk. Sarah had her paralegal textbooks cracked open under the fluorescent lights, the radio console humming with a low, steady hiss. A couple of deer strikes out near Weatherford had been the only action all night. Then the board lit up at 3:42 a.m. Custer County 911. What's your emergency? Nothing came through but wet, frantic breathing. Then a girl's voice, tiny and terrified.
"He's on the porch. Oh my God, he's trying the handle."
Sarah sat up straight, her textbook sliding off her lap. "Ma'am, I need your location. Do you have an address or a mile marker?"
"The old farmstead.
The girl gasped, her voice cracking.
The green one by the big concrete silo, off the North Access Road, right by the I-40 underpass. Please hurry. He's looking right through the window."
Sarah's fingers flew across the mechanical keyboard, dropping a priority response pin for the rural access route. "I've got 2 units rolling your way right now, sweetie. Listen to me. Is there a room you can lock? A bathroom or a closet?"
"I'm in the pantry,"
the girl whispered. A sharp, broken sob came through the line.
"The front door just popped. He's in the kitchen. I can hear him walking on the linoleum."
Sarah leaned forward, her eyes drifting away from the monitors. It was an involuntary reflex, her gaze wandering over to the small, reinforced window of the dispatch office. The window looked out into the main hallway of the highway patrol station, a hallway that was supposed to be completely locked up and empty after midnight. The hallway lights were off. The only illumination was the dull, sickly blue light coming from the vending machine down the hall. Through the glass, Sarah saw a shape. A man was standing perfectly still in the middle of the dark corridor. He was facing away from her at first, holding a phone tightly against his ear. Sarah felt the room go cold. The old backup generator down in the basement was acting up tonight, making a very distinct, rhythmic click-click-click sound through the vents. The exact same rhythmic click-click-click was currently echoing underneath the girl's frantic whispers in Sarah's headset. "Honey," Sarah whispered, her hand trembling so badly she could barely hold the microphone to her lips. "Are you really out at the farm?" In the hallway, the silhouette slowly, deliberately turned its head toward the dispatch window. The girl on the line stopped talking. Instead, the muffled physical sound of a man's voice traveled straight through the gap under Sarah's heavy office door, perfectly synchronized with the audio screaming into her ears.
"You really do have a nice phone voice, Sarah."
The fog off the Ozarks smelled like wet dirt and old iron. When the bike died, it didn't sputter or kick. The engine just dropped out from under Jeff, leaving nothing but the heavy, rhythmic drone of long-haul semis somewhere out on I-40 East. He managed to coast the dead weight onto the shoulder, his boots skidding through a patch of loose gravel right next to a rusted-out trailhead sign. His hands were frozen into stiff, useless hooks. He had to physically pry his fingers off the grips.
Fuel line,
He muttered to himself. He'd known it was leaking back in Fort Smith, but he'd pushed his luck anyway. Stupid.
Need a hand.
Jeff jumped so hard his boot caught the peg. A guy was leaning against the concrete picnic table tucked back in the tree line. It was hard to make out much of him in the soup, just a thick, oil-stained winter coat and a strange, lopsided slouch, like he was carrying all his weight on his left hip. He kept both hands shoved deep into his pockets.
yeah,
Jeff said, trying to clear the dry grit from his throat.
yeah, actually. I think my line gave out.
Got a garage set up at my truck.
The guy said. He didn't move closer. He just jerked his chin toward the woods.
Just a quick walk up the old logging cut. Got a couple jerry cans and some hose.
Everything in Jeff's gut told him to stay on the asphalt. Wait for a trooper. Wait for morning. But the mountain wind was starting to cut straight through his leather jacket, and the sweat on his neck was turning to ice. All right, Jeff sighed. Lead the way. The path was pure misery. Mostly slick mud and rotted pine needles that sucked at his boots. The stranger moved surprisingly fast for a guy with a bad limp.
Folks don't realize how empty these hills are.
The man said over his shoulder. His voice sounded flat, muffled by the fog.
You slip off the ridge out here, nobody's finding you until the forestry crews come through for the spring burn.
Good to know.
Jeff muttered. He pulled his phone out, hoping against hope for a single bar. The screen was totally dead. No service. But when the bright white backlight kicked on, it cast a sudden, sharp glare directly onto the stranger's back. Across the shoulder blades of the stained parka, there was a faded yellow stencil. State Forestry Department. Right underneath it, written in jagged, hurried strokes with a thick black Sharpie, were the words, Evidence Number 0944. Jeff stopped. His heart gave a hard, ugly thud against his ribs. The stranger took 3 more steps before he realized the footsteps behind him had stopped. He didn't turn around right away. He just stood there on the dark, muddy path, his head tilted down.
Keep up,
The man said. 100 feet ahead, where the trees cleared into a wider turnaround, a massive white Peterbilt was idling in the dark. No headlights, no running lights, just the low, deep rumble of a heavy diesel engine shaking the ground. The sleeper berth door was unlatched, swinging open just an inch or two, revealing an interior completely lined in thick, heavy blue tarps. Jeff took a step backward, his heel sinking into the muck.
Hey man, you know what? I think I left my socket set back on the seat of the bike. Let me go grab it real quick so we have the right sizes.
The man turned around. In the dim, fading glow of the cell phone screen, his hands were finally out of his pockets. He wasn't holding tools. He was slowly pulling a pair of heavy, yellow industrial rubber gloves up over his sleeves, the thick latex making a sharp, clean snap against his wrists.
You don't have a socket set, Jeff.
The automated agricultural inspection plaza outside of Needles was nothing but a glorified glass cage at the edge of the desert. It sat right where Interstate 40 dies out and bleeds into the California waste. David spent his nights surviving on terrible lobby coffee and watching the high-speed strobe units snap photos of commercial rigs crossing the state line. At 4:10 a.m., the flash unit for Lane 3 fired. The blinding white light bounced off the booth's glass, making David drop his pen. He looked up, expecting the usual wall of a massive freightliner rolling through the scales. The lane was completely empty. No engine brakes, no taillights fading into the dark, nothing. He figured a piece of tumbleweed or a stray desert dog had tripped the optical sensor. He didn't even bother checking the digital image log on his monitor. He just grabbed his heavy maglite, stepped out of the air-conditioned booth, and walked onto the concrete island to kick whatever debris it was out of the laser path. The desert air was freezing and dead quiet. He swept the flashlight beam down the concrete lane. Nothing but gray asphalt stretching out into the dark. The strobe fired again, right behind him. It cast David's own long, distorted shadow deep into the empty lane ahead. He spun around, his skin prickling with a sudden, violent wave of adrenaline. Standing right under the metal canopy, barely 5 feet away from him, was a man. He was wearing a cheap, dust-covered business suit, his hair completely plastered to his forehead with sweat despite the desert chill. He wasn't looking at David. He was staring directly up into the camera lens mounted on the overhang, holding a torn piece of cardboard. Scribbled on it in thick, messy marker were 2 words: "Look down." David's flashlight beam shook violently against the man's chest.
Hey, pal, you can't be out here on the active lanes. Get back behind the barrier right now.
The man didn't blink. He didn't even look at David. He just slowly lowered his right arm and pointed a single pale finger straight at the concrete between David's boots. David hesitated, his heart hammering in his ears, then slowly lowered the flashlight beam to his own feet. Directly between his shoes, a fresh, wet trail of muddy footprints led out from the dark gravel of the shoulder, walked straight through the camera sensor gate, and stopped exactly behind David's heels. Before his brain could process what that meant, the automated strobe fired a 3rd time, turning the entire desert white. The glare burned a bright green smear into David's retinas. Blinded, he lunged backward, his heel catching on the concrete lip of the island. He fell hard, the heavy metal maglite clattering away into the dark gravel. He didn't try to find it. He scrambled on his hands and knees, the freezing mud squeezing between his fingers, his eyes desperately trying to blink away the green static.
Hey,
He yelled, his voice cracking into a high, pathetic squeak.
get back.
He forced his eyes open. The glare was fading back into the dim orange wash of the overhead sodium lights. The man in the suit was gone. The metal canopy was entirely empty. The long, flat stretch of I-40 was dead. There was no sound of running footsteps, no rustle of gravel, no car doors slamming, just the low electrical hum of the high-voltage lines overhead. The flash unit on Lane 3 fired a 4th time. The sudden burst of light caught David flat on his back. In that exact microsecond of exposure, he didn't just see the white light, he heard a heavy, wet thud right on the other side of the concrete barrier, mere inches from his head. Like a heavy sack of meat being dropped from a height. David didn't think. He bolted. He threw himself at the heavy glass door of the station, his shoulder slamming into the frame so hard the metal rattled. He burst inside, threw his entire weight against the door and jammed the mechanical deadbolt until it clicked. He stood there, chest heaving, his hands slick with cold mud from the lane. His breath came in ragged, uneven gasps, instantly fogging up the glass panel in front of his face. He wiped it clear with his sleeve, staring out into the dark. Nothing was there. He was locked in. The station was a solid box of reinforced glass and steel. He was safe. Trying to stop his hands from shaking, he leaned over his desk and looked down at the desktop monitor. The old state government system was lagging, the automated image log slowly refreshing to generate the thumbnails for the last 4 camera triggers. The first image, from 4:10 a.m., showed the empty lane. The second image showed David walking out of the booth, his back to the frame. But standing directly behind him, his shoulder practically pressed against David's spine, was a tall, pitch-black silhouette. The high-speed flash hadn't bounced off it at all. It just looked like a human-shaped hole cut out of the center of the photograph. The third image was the man in the dust-covered suit holding the cardboard sign, but in the high-resolution digital log, the text didn't say, "Look down" anymore. The thick black marker had shifted, the wet ink bleeding into new letters. It read, "It is latched." David's stomach dropped. Latched? The booth door didn't latch. It locked with a deadbolt. His eyes darted to the fourth thumbnail, the one taken just a few seconds ago when he was scrambling on the ground. The camera angle was mounted high, looking straight down from the metal awning. It didn't show the lane. It showed the flat glass roof of the booth. Pressed completely flat against the glass panel, directly above the desk where David was currently standing, was a wide, pale face. It wasn't looking down at him. It was staring directly into the camera lens, smiling at its own picture. If you made it through tonight's collection, pass it on to someone you want to keep safe, or maybe someone special you'd like to haunt. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss our next nightmare. Until next time, loves, stay safe and sleep well.